Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Ryan Ban Tran on the show, and he's CEO and Executive Director over at Trans International Group, Inc. and Meta Trading and Investment JSC. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam.
All right, so I've been waiting to have you on the show for a long time, Ryan, man. I've been waiting to get you here, so I'm glad I finally have you on, and I'm excited about today's topic. So we'll talk about global growth through Vietnam and the Americas, and excited to get into your work over at Trans International Group and Meta Trading and Investment. But before we do that, we'll start this episode, Ryan, the way that we start them all, with what we like to call our Mission Matters Minute. So Ryan, at Mission Matters, our aim and our goal is to amplify stories for entrepreneurs, for executives, for experts. That's what we do. Ryan, what mission matters to you?
Mission that matters to me is sustainability, creating a lasting positive social impact in a sustainable way. Because I'm at a phase in my life where any projects or anything that I do right now, I need it to be sustainable and long lasting. So that's my current mission, to leave behind a legacy that way.
Yeah. Awesome. Love bringing mission-based individuals on here to share, why they do what they do and how they do it. So we all learn and grow together. So great having you on, and excited to get more into your work as well. But first off, I'm curious, as we get to know each other, like, how did you get started in business with this? I mean, strategist, I know you as a strategist and systems integrator, but like, where did all this begin for you? Take me back in time a little bit here.
Sure. So I actually grew up in Southern California from an average family, so nothing special. In the early 2000s, I studied electrical computer engineering from Cal Poly. And then I moved out to the East Coast because I got my first job working for EMC corporations. So that would have been a regular life for me, but life took a turn, unexpectedly, because during my first 5-6 months in my first job, I was introduced to my dad's friend, who back at that time happened to be the Deputy Director of Commerce for the Ministry of Industry and Trade of Vietnam. And he came out to the US because his job was to expand trade relation between Vietnam and the West. And we got connected. To make a long story short, he convinced me to start collaborating with him on the side at first, and then eventually evolved into something more serious in the long term. But my roles essentially at the time was to help the Ministry of Industry and Trade of Vietnam to look for Western clients to use the Vietnam supply chain for contract manufacturing. Right. So I started off doing that and was mentored by him as well, and learned the trade in international business. But as you can see, because I wasn't just representing and working with a specific company, but I was dealing with a government. So a lot of my work tends to be a lot more macro, and I think more long-term strategy. Sustainability is a big part of it, right? I see what will be strategic and advantageous in the long run, and not just a short-term way of doing things. And also, then he started introducing me to a lot of key people that would meet. So my circle ended up becoming like diplomats, ambassador, ministries, and also large multinational conglomerates. And it was from there that I become friends with many of the big chairmen of different conglomerate and state-owned enterprises around the world. And over time, as I become friends with them, they start pulling me into a different industry.
Yeah.
The one that's successful in real estate would ask me to help them with real estate deal flow. The one that's in supply chain would be supply chain, tech would be tech, and so forth. And it was during that time that I was fortunate enough to get mentored by many different experts and big players in different industry, and learn the trade in many different industry over time. So when you're being taught and being familiar with strategy internationally on many different industry, that section allows you to, over time, think of how business are being done in a global way that are more multidimensional versus someone who's just doing one thing for a very long time. And that essentially leads to me over time getting involved into the private equity and finance side, and looking at from how capital inflow intersect with trade and business, and then which led to me doing a lot of solution design, integration, and just being an entrepreneur and creating a business around the world.
Mm. Roughly, I mean, not don't have to be exact, but roughly how long ago was that first was kind of that first
Well,
introduction to this?
a little bit over than 20 years ago.
Wow. So you've seen so much happen in that last 20 years. I'm curious if I can we can just stay on the early days just a little bit longer because something that you said was super interesting. And that is it taught you how to think maybe a little bit differently, like on a global level and in terms of not being with just one particular company, but working with many and having a different perspective. Like what was that like for that to be like at such a young age, right? To be able to be introduced to that perspective. Like what was that like? How did that shape your views on maybe even what you do today?
Sure. There's, of course, there's pros and cons.
Hmm.
I can start with the cons first, and that is that it takes a very long time to develop the mental framework for it. So it's not something that you can
Mm,
just learn overnight. It's an accumulation of experiences from dealing with various industry and
yeah.
going through the trials and error, and then seeing how the dots connect over time. The other disadvantage in starting at such a young age is that no one takes you very seriously, because
Mm,
as you can see right now, I'm approaching my mid 40s and I still look like I'm in my early 30s, according to some people. Well, if I'm not wearing a suit, right?
yeah.
So you can only imagine how I looked when I was in my early 20s.
Right.
So yeah, so the challenge at the beginning was uh, people are not taking you seriously because you look too young and inexperienced.
Mm,
But the beautiful thing around that is if you know how to leverage of your network and the people around you, then that can be what you would call your backing
yeah.
to build up the credibility. So I guess the pros from being within that environment is I learned very, very quickly on how to leverage my resources and network around me.
Mm,
So while people might not buy into me directly at the beginning, when I was trying to break into the industry,
mm,
I was able to say that I work directly with the deputy director of commerce of Vietnam. And although they might, trick the eye a little bit at first and said, like, you sure for someone that young? But once they get a chance to speak to him and met him, then they start taking me more seriously. And it allows
mhm.
me the opportunity to be able to develop additional resources and within my network that normally that people would not have until they're much older. So
Mm. Yeah, that's great. I was just so curious because I'm like, what would it be like at that age to be working with people at that level? And it's super interesting. So going back to something that we talked about a little bit earlier. So you're known as a strategist and systems integrator. Can you maybe kind of define what that means to you? And maybe even if you want to share a project or an example to kind of help us shed light on exactly what that means.
sure, exactly. So obviously that word is being used in different ways in different
Hmm.
industry. But a lot of time when people say they do strategy, it's usually within the confine of a specific product, a specific industry that they work within.
Yeah.
I'm cross sector because I have such a vast experience in so many different industry due to my background.
Mm,
I was able to essentially see how the dots connect cross sector, but also understanding what um, the end user or end clients needs. In my case, a lot of them are government related projects.
mhm.
So, for example, instead of having a specific product to sell to people, uh, my approach is I find out what the client needs. In this case, what the government needs. A lot of
Yeah.
time they don't know what they want, so you have to dig a little bit deeper into their mental framework and see if I was in their situation, what
Mm,
am I really looking for? So what they say versus what they actually want, you need to be able to connect the dot.
mm,
For example, uh, I within my portfolio of business, I accumulate a lot of different technology that either we
mhm,
develop in-house or we have invested into. And a lot of them revolves around sustainability, as I said, like food,
mhm.
water, energy, things, material building, things that people would need to live within the world, like the real estate,
Right.
right? So now I don't approach any particular client or government saying, "Hey, I have this product to sell you," right? As you understand, I engage with the United Nations and many other multilateral organizations.
Mhm,
And usually at these type of event, if I'm speaking about a specific industry sector and how we're leveraging our technology to solve some of these major world issues, usually the government, whether it will be, for example, at the United Nations, it will either be the ambassador himself or
Hmm.
herself, or they'll send the first secretary to observe the conference. And if what I spoke about resonate with some of the issue that they're having within the country, they will
Mm.
request to have a one-on-one meeting with me, right? Then they would present the challenges. I'll give you one specific example.
Hmm.
In 2019, the government of Nigeria, after listening in on one of the conference I spoke at the UN regarding food security and how we address on that issue, requested to meet and discuss regarding how we can help them achieve food security. The
Mm.
goal for the government during that time was to be able to be self-sufficient in growing their own food, and their
Hmm.
staple crop was rice, and a lot of them they were importing predominantly from Vietnam, I'm sorry, India and Thailand, right?
Yeah.
And the government don't want to have to rely on import all the time, so they brought their issue up to me, and then it was up to me to figure out how to address it. So it wasn't like they said, "Oh, I need this product or I need that product," right? They
Yeah.
just give you an issue, then you have to architect a solution for them. So in that
Mm.
particular situation, I would go back and look through my portfolio and have a
Hmm.
board meeting with a different stakeholder and like within the companies and the portfolio, and integrate together a few different technology on how this
Mm.
going to work together to solve that particular problem. So in that specific example, we have a water technology that helps you basically once it come in contact with water, it looks like little white pellets.
Yeah.
Uh, but once it come in contact with water, it absorbs it and it turns into like gel. Prevent the water from wasting into the soil and evaporating. Therefore, you're cutting the water cost on the agriculture component, right? So that
Mm.
is water. Then I have a research center in Thailand that I co-founded together with my partner. We have PhDs that have been working with soil and biochemistry for
Mm.
well over 40 years, together with University of Chiang Mai in Thailand. And
Mm.
those develop customized solution for the soil based on the nutrients that are missing to help
Mhm.
accelerate the growth of the crops, right? So you cut water costs, you accelerate the growth, and then we have uh, automation of equipment and hardware that allow them to work a lot more efficient versus just which
Mm.
shovel and picks, right? Like mini handheld tractor and so forth. So the integration of multiple of these solutions enable them to, as a net result compared to what they're currently doing, was
Mhm.
4x the output of food. And then afterward, we have other waste, and we would have a waste to energy technology in our portfolio that'll get rid of all the waste. So it's a
Mm.
circular economy solution. So it's not where you're just addressing the front end of an issues and then a lot of additional waste by increasing food, right? But when we do that, what end up happening is I propose the solution to the government afterward as how we're going to solve this particular problem.
Mm.
We'll even do a preliminary feasibility study on it to showcase the yield. You know, you look at environmental impact assessment and
Mhm.
product life cycle study, the whole 9 yards. Then I'll even offer to finance the government because a lot of time these emerging market, they like the solution but they don't have the financing available.
Mm.
So the strategy, what I would do in that is I offer to finance them as well, up to 80% of the capex.
Mm.
Then as long as the guarantee the government gives me is that they will buy back all the products. So in this case is the rice, right? Because they
Right.
don't told me that is their staple crop. So I am just giving them what they want. So I'm not there to just sell them a product that I have. They tell me what they want. I create a
Right.
solution for them. Then they just guarantee me that they would take that solution. So with that being said, the project is engineered in a way where it become a fixed income play to de-risk a new venture.
Mm.
And when that happened, then because of that additional margin layer that I have, now here's what a cross sector is. Now I have to go beyond just the tech integration and go into the financial engineering
Mm.
and have to leverage off the additional margin that we're able to create to de-risk the project. So I would utilize insurance wrap, like from a Lloyd of London, to wrap around the project
Mhm.
to boost the credit rating of the project because Nigeria was a triple B minus credit rating in 2019, which is not
Mm.
bankable. So by de-risking the project by doing an insurance wrap, that boosts the credit rating, but I would use a secondary layer of insurance through the World Bank or
Yeah.
USAID at a time that will de-risk it against geopolitical risk in case of a war breaks out and such. So that combination boosts the credit rating up to the A, which enable it to be refinanced out. So that's how I'm able to engineer and design a project that normally would not be bankable, would not be
Yeah.
financeable, into something that can work. And the foundation is because we have the solution technology within our portfolio that creates the value, therefore giving me the margin to de-risk the project. So that's how I would engineer and strategize and solve problem that way.
That's a great example, and I'm curious about. I mean, you started in this line of work with Vietnam. I'm curious about your work there today. Can you talk a little bit more about that and really just any projects or things that you're working on? I'm curious.
Sure. So back then I started with Vietnam, and then obviously I went international and started dealing with other countries around the world.
Yeah.
Because 20 years ago, Vietnam weren't quite ready to embrace the international market fully. Culturally, they still need a little bit of time to adapt. The capital market wasn't yet established, and Vietnam was only competitive 20-something years ago in agriculture, textile, and furniture. Nowadays, it's practically everything, right? Samsung, LG, many of the major Korean conglomerate, Japanese, Taiwanese, Singaporean, all coming there, and even now many of the Western country are coming there as well. Which is why I started in the last few years exploring doing projects within Vietnam itself. And just recently, I just came back from Vietnam, bringing two bankers with me, one from New York and one from Switzerland, to explore the market in Vietnam, because we're right now having a couple of projects being developed. One is that I'm currently together under Meta Trading Investment Joint Stock Corporation, which is the Vietnam conglomerate that I'm the executive director in. We're investing to building out a 10 megawatt AI data center in Da Nang, Vietnam. So that's one of our key project right now. The projects we already have land allocation in the Da Nang High Tech Park, which is like a special economic zone, which enable for like high tech park and stuff to be there, that gets special tax abatement as well as privileges that you wouldn't get by just being within the country by itself. And that was being done to attract foreign companies and technology to be within the Vietnam infrastructure. So in that particular project, do you want me to share a little bit regarding the example of how the system design, stuff like that were?
Oh, for sure. Get into it. Yeah.
Yeah. So when, data center is obviously a big thing right now because of AI.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and here in the US, you hear about people building hyperscale everywhere, right? 1 gigawatt, hundreds of megawatt. These are huge data center.
Yeah.
From our approach, we think that those are feasible for the large, giant tech company like Meta, as in Facebook, not our company.
Right.
Google, X, Grok, like those kind of stuff, where they themselves are the offtake consumer. But for most other people, I think the more advantageous way of doing it over time, and we'll learn this, we'll be doing modular data center that are in smaller megawattage, nothing so huge, but are more on-site location specialty for doing data inferencing for a specific application. Right? And also by having it decentralized in such a way, it's also easier to protect against any type of security breach and attack. Of course, there's energy source that is the driving factor that makes why people kind of centralize everything towards a certain area. So we're looking at energy too, but once that is addressed, we're aiming more to a smaller modular data center. So with that being the backdrop to why we're doing a 10 megawatt data center, what we're planning to do is to treat it as a pilot. So it's going to be high compute AI data center to do data inferencing for some of our own project actually, that working within the Vietnam infrastructure. But it's also going to be designed to serve as a pilot for a new system design that we're looking to work around, with the theme being sustainability, right? And positive social impact.
And that goes through most of your work, right? The sustainability theme.
Correct. Exactly. So here's another example of how when we architect solution and I design a solution around that it has to incorporate the sustainability factor. So whereas treating data center as just a commodity, we're looking at the whole entire system architect. So obviously, so on that project, we partner with HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, because
Mhm.
they have a technology that enables for water coolant, which reduce energy consumption. Okay,
Mhm.
so electricity production generates a lot of carbon dioxide, right? Which
Mhm.
so the way that we look to how to um, mitigate that as much as possible is through feeding the CO2 into a closed loop system that we're working on as
Mhm.
phase two after the data center is built up. And that is so the other thing that I didn't mention is my group, we also have background in working with algae to grow
Mhm.
algae for biofuel and other application. And we've done that in other projects before. So what we plan to integrate into the ecosystem is we're going to use algae as a form of water treatment. So
Mhm.
if you're funneling water into the system to cool it down, you need to treat water, right, to
Mhm.
recycle the water. So algae is a big component that we're using to treat the water. The CO2 from the energy production will become the feedstock for the algae.
Mhm.
And then as the algae treat the water, all the residues, such as the heavy metal and so forth, and the byproduct, the way that we're then integrating that into
Mhm.
the circular economy is that that can be feed into an anaerobic digester, which would then turn off those derivatives into chemical blocks and other additional
Mhm.
secondary derivatives that can generate additional revenue stream. Now, normally an anaerobic digester consumes a lot of energy because you have to have very, very high heat. So most of the time, while it does get rid of the waste and turn it into something useful, the energy input is a lot more expensive than what you're getting in return. So you at a net negative.
Mm.
However, within this integrated system of what we're doing, as you understand, data center generates a lot of heat, right? So the other funnel is we're funneling the heat from all the data center, which you have to build the HVAC and around it anyways, instead of just dissipating into the air, that can be
Yeah.
funneled into the anaerobic digester, therefore maintaining a specific heat balance,
Mm.
reducing now the energy cost that you have to input to heat it up, right? So
Mm.
as a result, on the preliminary calculation from a view of the nuclear engineer, we believe we can achieve net positive. So you both are
Wow.
profitable as well as getting rid of all the waste and design a circular economy around the data center system. And then
Mm.
for the algae that reproduce very, very quickly and treating the water while digesting all the carbon dioxide, the
Mm.
biomass can be used to be blend together with our other supply chain, because we're also the top supplier to IKEA in Southeast Asia, because we have a wood manufacturer in
Mhm.
Vietnam, and we also have our own integrated forest that we grow our own trees and process them for the
Mhm.
production. So most of the tree gets utilized except for the bark, which normally you would just burn them and grind it down. But in this case, the bark can now be blended together with the biomass from the algae to create green coal that we burn with
Mm.
much lesser carbon offset. Then you have the carbon credit angle from it. So that is an example of how we would do system design strategy
Mm.
around something different from just the rice example that I gave you earlier,
Yeah.
and on the project in Vietnam.
And what about some of the like I think you're also involved with products in Vietnam, right? And helping those kind of spread to other markets. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, sure. So as you look at my Vietnam conglomerate, the company
Mhm.
is called Meta Trading and Investment Joint Stock Corporation, right? So
Mhm.
the data center example that I gave you will be an example of project where we invest into and develop out that's
Yeah.
aligned with the economic development of the country. Of course, the other component is trading, which is product sales
Mm.
and procurement and so forth. So we're specialized in a lot of commodity trades, right? So, of course, we own mines, bauxite mines in Laos, which we procure to Trafigura, Vito, Hitachi Metal, and many of the big players around the world. But in
Mhm.
terms of from a strategy standpoint, I've been working with the Ministry of Industry and Trade to help them come up with sort of like a business development strategy on a macro
Mm.
level to help the country increase the GDP as a whole. Um,
Mhm.
this has been about close to a 10-year initiative that we've been working on as and Vietnam and two largest trading partner is U.S. and China. And
Hmm.
as you understand that U.S. and China have been butting head in a trade war. So Vietnam being stuck in the middle needs to look for an alternative third-party market that's more stable and they can also rely on without having to pick a side, right?
Yeah.
And one of the thing that I brought up to the Ministry of Industry and Trade since almost 10 years ago was we need to explore the Latin American market.
Mm.
Uh, because although, most of the time it gets disregarded by the US and many countries because it's not representative of a major market. But
Hmm.
a lot of people don't realize that collectively there's a lot of potential within
Yeah.
these markets. Like for example, one of the reason why I keep on telling the government of Vietnam and even my own group that I led to go and explore the Latin American market is
Mm.
because most Asian people who don't have a lot of I guess travel experience dealing with the United States. When you think of America, you tend to think of just Caucasian people. What they
Yes.
don't realize is it's a huge mixed crowd, and the Latino market is the second largest demographic. I think
Mm.
about 20% of the U.S. population, at least as of I think 2024, 2025,
Hmm.
is are Latinos, right? So what does that mean? That means that it has huge ties in terms of influence to the Latin
Hmm.
American market if you want to enter the U.S. market. A lot of the Vietnamese company, and this is also very similar to many other Asian companies, Southeast Asia. Once they become established and are big within their own country,
Hmm.
they, some of them do explore the local neighbors, but then many of them, their immediate next goal is I need to go and create an international market, an office in either London or New York, somewhere in
Mm.
right to make a statement that hey, I am international, and
Yeah.
then they try to go and enter these market under their own brand. Now, a lot of these Vietnamese company they have successfully entered the U.S. market through doing white labels. Yeah,
Mm.
so they're doing private label for Western brands. I'm
Yeah.
sure you see many when you buy clothing at the malls and where the furniture
Hmm.
pieces.
Of course.
Two say tax that made in Vietnam, right? So yeah, so Vietnam product are well within the Western market. However, none of them are known in terms of the Vietnam brand themselves, other than
Mm.
Sriracha, which is like a Vietnamese American brand, and maybe like a rice brand or something like the Buddha or like the elephant brand.
Hmm. Right.
Other than that, Vietnamese brands aren't well known at all in the West. So many of these companies they want to enter the market and they try to go
Mhm.
and hire a consultant to enter the market, and 90%, 95% plus of the time they all fail.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why is because the demographic of the Vietnamese people are less than 1%, right? So so
Hmm.
so so they tend to not do very well.
Hmm.
So the strategy and how to really enter the 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 U.S. market that I've been discussing with the government is first you have to enter the Latin American market first, right?
Mm.
So for multiple reasons, as what I mentioned, one is because of the demographic of Latino being the second largest.
Yep.
So by going first into the Latin American market and develop a market there successfully, not only are you generating revenue for yourself immediately and not having to invest all this money into create like the best product there is out there, and hopefully that the consumer in the US will buy.
Yeah.
uh, One of the reason why is because a the standard of living in Latin America in general are more conducive to that of Vietnam. I think
Mm.
Vietnam is slightly ahead than a lot of the Latin American country in terms of economic
Hmm.
development, but at least the standard of living are very, very similar. So that means that the lifestyle of how people live and the product that they consume are very,
Mm.
very similar. So as a whole, on a macro level, so I'm not talking about one specific company's product,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever that you're already producing within your own country for internal consumption can immediately be exported, and the population demographic of the Latino market can easily consume it as long as the the the
Mm.
the product has good value, has good pricing, and doesn't have any type of issue in terms of quality like toxicity and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's one. The second component is that well, I specifically uh, picked the Dominican Republic to be the stepping stone into the Latin American market, and then into the United States. There's a few different not barrier, but a few gateway. You have Mexico, you have Brazil, which is, you have the two major market that you can
Hmm.
enter in. But the reason why I chose, from a strategy standpoint, for the Vietnam side, the Dominican Republic, is because for Mexico, even though it is part of a corridor directly into the U.S., is
Hmm.
very stable in terms of cartel activities. And
Mm.
and if I put on the hat of someone who is coming from Asia, safety is a major concern, right? So many people are not going to want to take that type of risk. In
Yeah.
terms of Brazil, they speak Portuguese, so it is a different language. So it is a bit of a barrier as
Mm.
compared to other countries that speak Spanish, because one of the major point why I also consider Dominican Republic is because it is a Spanish-speaking country.
Mm.
So once you're able to establish yourself within that specific country, um, it is easier to scale into the surrounding country, because
Mm.
culturally a lot of the Latin American country are similar culture, right? I understand when you get into nuances there are differences, but
Of
generally
course.
speaking,
Yeah.
similar culture and you have similar language. So from the scalability standpoint, from my perspective, it's more conducive to expanding from California to Texas and to New York,
Mm.
more so than from one country to another. It's even easier than going from Vietnam to Thailand and to Cambodia and to some of the other
Mm.
countries, because in ASEAN, Southeast Asia, even though we're neighbors and we have similar cultures,
Yeah.
every country speak a different language. So therefore, we that is a barrier of entry that the
Mm.
Latin American market don't have, because they all speak the same language, except for,
Mm.
right. So that's
Yeah.
the other point. The Dominican Republic, although it's a small island state with a population about close to 13 million people, it shares the island with Haiti, which is about another 13 million people. But it
Mm.
is the it has one of the better infrastructure. So therefore, you can dispatch and redistribute product throughout the rest of the Caribbean,
Hmm.
which makes it another key attractive point. I've been doing business there for about 10 years. So that
Hmm.
means there's a control environment to control the success rate, because many of the big family and the buyers are also happen to be within my circle of network, right?
Mm.
So you have that component. And then Dominican Republic is part of the Central America Free Trade Agreement. I mean,
Mm.
products going from Dominican Republic into the surrounding countries, there's no duty. It used to be no duty into the United States until recently, with
Mm.
President Trump's tariff. I believe it's now 10%, but it's also no duty going to the EU. So it's a very good
Mm.
strategic fit and centralized between North and South America. So then product from Vietnam can go into the country, could be sold within the country, but also can be
Mm.
used within the free trade zone as an assembly line to finish up the assembly of a product and then redistribute and sell to the surrounding
Mhm.
market in the EU without any tax, therefore making it actually Vietnam potentially be competitive and closer to the price point of that of Chinese product when you go into the surrounding country. So
Mm.
when you accumulate all that stuff together, and also the fact that in the U.S. market, how that's going to be a good transition as a stepping stone to the United States market.
Yeah.
Many of the buyers of the big box store, like the Walmart, Costco, Kroger's,
Hmm.
Home Depot, Lowe's, they tend to be Lat- Latino ethnicity. The
Hmm.
reason why is because they have to understand what the U.S. American population want in terms of the products. But
Hmm.
because the second largest market is Latinos, they have to understand what the Latinos market likes to consume. So that
Yeah.
requires someone who understands the culture. That's why a lot of the buyer tends to be of that type of ethnic background.
Mm.
And part of their job is that uh, yearly, when they go back and visit their family within Latin America, they would go
Mm.
out to the supermarket and all the other store to see what are the latest trendy product that's the hottest, that the consumer there like, and then they were
Yeah.
introduced into the U.S. market. So by doing a strategy on the trade route, by going that particular direction, once
Mm.
Vietnam can establish some of their brand within the Dominican market, and then scaling it out into the rest of Latin American market. And once the brand are more familiar, it can then be reintroduced into the US market with empirical data, with the market looking specifically for that type of product. Therefore, highly increasing the success rate of such a brand entering like a Vietnam brand entering into the US market, right? One final example that I can just give you would be within Africa, there is a ramen brand called Indomie. Me as in like mee goreng, like which mean that noodle that you see the prepackaged like cup of noodle. Indomie, short for Indonesia, me, right? But that brand was established within, I believe, Nigeria or somewhere within one of the African country, multiple decades ago, many decades ago. I would say even close to maybe almost 100 years, if I remember correctly.
Wow. Okay.
But in there, many generation, it was an approach that this Indonesian family took in terms of creating the brand within Africa. And after multiple generation, it has become a staple brand within Africa. So now many of the African native, they would say, no, Indomie is an African brand. They just see it as their own brand, right? Even though realizing that the name in itself originated from Indonesia. So that would be an example of how, if the strategy of what I described, it was done correctly after multiple generations, a Vietnam brand can be viewed as, hey, this is a Latino brand. That's what the next generation of Latinos can claim. Therefore, making a better case for the United States, the big box store, to want to carry these brands within their market.
Yeah. Man, Ryan, it's been great having you on today. You did not disappoint. I knew you would come with some really good examples and specific strategies for our audience. I learned a lot, especially about Latin America. I mean, the way that you proposed that, I'm like, oh, it makes total sense why you would create a strategy like that. That being said, if people want to follow up, they want to learn more, they want to connect and follow your work, how do they do that?
Yeah, they actually can reach me on LinkedIn. I don't use most of the other social media. It's very private, just for me and my family and friends. But this LinkedIn, and you can also check out the Trans International Group website and the Meta Trading and Investment Joint Stock website, which you can list on later on afterward. But my LinkedIn is where you would find more information about myself.
Fantastic. And for everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put some links in the show notes, so you can just click on the links and head right on over, connect with Ryan. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Yes, you heard me right. Each and every day, we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way on your journey as well. So hit that subscribe or follow button. And Ryan, again, man, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Adam.